Hi, I'm Terri Hirning, and I'm here today with,
Hi, I'm Matthew Hirning.
and we actually have with us our very first podcast guest. And that is Eric Hirning, AKA the dad. So, welcome, Eric.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, we really, as we're launching this podcast and we're sharing the journey of autism treatment and recovery and what it meant for our whole family and our son, I thought it was a really important to bring in you as his father and really talk about the unique relationship between you and Matthew and just what we've gone through over the last 15 years in this process. So, can you start the interview by just giving everybody a brief introduction of who you are?
So, as you guys know, but others may not, I am Eric Hirning. I am Matthew's dad, and I have been on this journey for the same amount of time as you guys, and and yeah.
Great. Well, and I want to bring up that because of this journey, both of us have had the opportunity to work in the alternative and holistic wellness and health realm, so to speak. And that you work for a company near and dear to our hearts. I'm sure we'll be talking about what we've done in terms of the biomedical treatments, but Biocidin is the company that you work for. And you work for them sort of as a result of us using the products very, very successfully, not only for Matthew, but really for our whole family. And so you sort of wear two hats, just like me, where we started this not knowing a thing about alternative, holistic, anything. And now, really, both you and I live and breathe this realm and interface both with people who are wanting to support their health and wellness, but also physicians and practitioners who are also utilizing these supplements for improved health and wellness. So,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, had Matthew not been born with the condition that he was born with, we always like to say that everything happens for a reason, and because of that diagnosis that I say he received, but actually we received it. That's what put us on this path. And otherwise, had he not, who knows where we would be right now? I mean, I personally would probably be 250 pounds plus, probably diabetic, if not, or pre-diabetic, if not diabetic, completely unwell. So thank you, Matthew, for being born and putting us on this path.
well, and I do want to mention something because I feel like there were environmental triggers that resulted in Matthew's diagnosis. Now, whether or not, certainly I believe that there were genetic predispositions that were there at birth, but there were also environmental triggers that led to Matthew's subsequent diagnosis. So we'll be getting into that later on the podcast as well. But I want to start with this journey because it's certainly not an easy one. There are reportedly very high rates of divorce in special needs families, which you and I can understand fairly easily. We've had our own journey of this. Putting additional stress. And at one point in time, the physician that we worked with and who led Matthew's autism treatment and recovery journey, Dr. Kurt Wohler, at one point called us autism recovery rock stars. And I remember laughing at that. But it struck me that this really was a journey of a whole family. And I want to talk a little bit about marital stress. And we're going to get into some other questions for you as a dad. But what, in terms of our journey, what helped in your perspective as a father and as a husband in terms of the autism recovery journey and marital stress and just being a special needs parent? What were some things that helped in our relationship?
Well, I mean, I think probably the biggest thing that helped was not overwhelming one or the other. You had, I mean, I was working, I was out doing sales calls and stuff, doing my thing. So I kind of got that break while I was at work, while you were dealing with all the stresses of all the different therapies and the different cooking and all the things. So I kind of had the benefit of working outside the home and not being in the home the whole time. Um, so I think that benefited me. But then when I came home, I would give you that break so that you could go and have some time to yourself, whether it's go to book club or go meet a friend for dinner or just to go hang out or whatever. And then also on the weekends, we would try to do things separately to kind of to unwind and kind of reduce the stress a little bit.
And it is a big thing. And one of our future podcast guests is going to cover taking care of parents and caregivers and some tools. And certainly I have a mindset giveaway on my website that is available as a free download to help with some strategies for reducing the stress. But I think Matthew has a question for you.
Yes, I do. What did you think of all the interventions Mom wanted to try?
Um, you know, bottom line is if it was going to help you, I was all for it. I didn't care if it was okay. Now we have to wear dangly, purpley things from our ears from 2 to 6 on a Wednesday. If that was going to help you, I was all in. Some of them I thought were a little. I questioned a little bit. You talked about on your first episode about the ion cleanse. As a former access control guy, putting electronics into water is like the biggest no-no you could ever do. And when Mom came home and said, "Hey, we're going to try this ion cleanse foot bath thing," and I'm like, "Okay, wait. So you put these electrodes in the water, and you're not shocking the person?" So I thought that was a little out there. But then as soon as we saw those results after that very first session, I'm like, I'm 100% in. So I mean, some of the interventions that we did. I mean, we used to joke, I don't know if you remember, Matthew, but we used to joke that anytime Mom would go to a conference, it's like, okay, what is she going to come home with? Or what do we have to get rid of once she gets home? It was, we have to get rid of the carpet. We have to get rid of the mattresses. We got to get foam latex mattresses. And oh, surprise, we have a sauna being delivered in a few weeks. So it was kind of the running joke of when she goes to conferences or went to conferences, what is she coming back with? So, but I mean, to answer the question, I was 100% in. If I knew it was going to help you or thought it was going to help you, or there was even the possibility, I was in 100%.
Well, and that goes back to way back when there were conferences called DAN, Defeat Autism Now, and it was a really one of a kind environment because it was a practitioner physician level training. This is where actually I didn't meet Dr. Wohler there, but I saw him there. You had physicians who were seeking to help their patients with the rising rates of autism and understanding that along with the diagnosis often came things like food allergies, inflammation, autoimmunity, GI issues, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, even severe IBS symptoms or Crohn's disease. So there were all of these underlying things that oftentimes got lumped together in with a diagnosis of autism. And there were these physicians that were like, we just don't think that we should just write it off to autism. What can we do? Are there interventions that are helpful? And that was where the talk of methyl B12 injections and methyl B12 therapy for autism was explored and educated for the physicians and parents who wanted to learn this. And you would learn about the environmental toxins that were being linked to autism, or how individuals with autism often had impaired detoxification pathways. And so even if they were being exposed at not even a higher rate as you or your other children, sometimes they had harder times detoxing. And so every time I would go to these conferences, you would learn these different things and you had to weigh things, right? It was, how far out of your comfort zone does this fall? Do I feel like I can feasibly do this? is there a risk reward ratio? Like, what is it going to be harmful for my child? Do I need a physician, to guide me or to give me a prescription? So as a parent, you're always looking at all of those things. And then we would take all of this to our physician and say, okay, so since we've been looking at labs and we know what's going on in his body, does this intervention seem like something that would be beneficial to him? And so part of that was absolutely cleaning up our environment, getting rid of Teflon, getting rid of plastics, cleaning up our sleep environment. And like you mentioned, the mattresses, detoxing. How can we do that safely with a small child? All of these different things. So you're right in that, there wasn't anything that I came home with that you ever said, no, I really don't want to do this. I mean, you were a gamer, so I have to give you that for sure. And that was the support that I needed because, it is a lot of stress getting this information. As a parent, I would, beat up myself like, oh my gosh, I was the one who bought him those plastic bottles or plastic sippy cups, or I was the one cooking it, on Teflon and doing all these things. So you have to kind of get over that parent guilt, but you were the one saying, yeah, sure. All right, let's do it. I don't know what this is going to mean for us in the future, but let's, we're going to dive in. So I want to cover the next piece, which as a father, I feel like, there a lot of the coming from the groups, the conferences, it's predominantly moms. I do know some really dedicated dads out there, and sometimes I think it's hard for them because, like you said, very classically, you were out working, have had a 9 to 5. And so I was the one who, once, we knew what was going on with Matthew, I quit my job to be a stay-at-home mom with him because that was really more of a necessity. He wasn't sleeping, he was screaming most of the day and night. So you as the dad, you are engaged, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, 9 to whatever it is. And so at these conferences, it is primarily moms, but I feel like there's such a big connection. And sometimes it's isolating maybe for dads in this process, because moms, we're networking with our physicians, our practitioners, other moms and dads in in this community. And we're talking about diet, and we're talking about all of the different things that go along with a biomedical treatment. So for you as a father, I really do feel like you have a pivotal relationship as a father. You have a pivotal relationship with your daughters, but also with Matthew. And how did you as a dad connect meaningfully with Matthew? Because that was challenging when early on there was no eye contact, there was no response when his name was called. I don't know, you probably don't remember many of those days, but as a dad, because there's going to be plenty of time for me to talk about my experiences with Matthew, but how did you connect meaningfully in this process with Matthew?
Well, during the process, I think probably the best way we connected really was when Matthew, I think, was in kindergarten and expressed an interest in being a Cub Scout. And I was a Cub Scout. I was a scout when I was little. And so I'm like, okay, I'm all in. If this is going to be something that we can do together. I mean, I remember some of my Cub Scout little field trips that we used to do. We went to the fire station, went to the police station, went to the news station, and I wanted to share those experiences with Matthew as well. So I thought, okay, if that's a way, that's something that he and I can do together. And actually, honestly, some of my best memories with Matthew are around scouting. I mean, they're one of my favorite pictures that I have of the two of us is we were out at a local lake east of here. We were out canoeing. There was a canoeing camping trip. There was a thunderstorm that had come through, and after the thunderstorm, Matthew wanted to go back out in the canoe. I'm like, right, let's go. It's not thundering and lightning anymore. And so we were out there, and there was a rainbow that came, and the perspective from where the picture was taken, it looked like the rainbow was coming right into the canoe where Matthew and I were. It's like one of my all-time favorite pictures of the two. You can't tell it's us because it's off in the distance, but I know that it's us. Matthew knows that it's us. So I would say the scouting program is one of the best ways that he and I really bonded. I mean, there's things that we've gotten to do, and we've had a lot of fun doing them, especially as he got older and lost more and more of his diagnosis, if that makes any sense. But as he got more, I don't want to say neurotypical, but as he got more engaged and able to do more things, we were able to do more things. And it probably some of the best memories I have.
Well, I'm glad you brought up scouting. And for everyone listening, these interviews are not script. I mean, Matthew and I go over our questions of what we want to ask the interviewee, but you didn't know these coming in. And so this is not a scripted, this is really, we want it to be real life and a real glimpse at our life and a discussion with people authentically. And I'm glad you brought up scouting because it wasn't easy, right? Were you able to just drop them off and pick them up when the scout meeting was over?
No, that's what got me involved, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to just, like some parents do, they just drop off. And as a scoutmaster now, I'm the babysitter for an hour and a half a week. But I knew that, and I always say that scouting isn't something that your kids do. It's something you do with your kids. I always preach that to all of our parents. So, and it was something that I wanted to do and be a part of, because I mean, quite honestly, scouts do a lot of fun and cool stuff. And I'm a little bit older and I can't do that fun and cool stuff unless I'm in a scouting program with my son or daughter. So part of it was selfish or self-serving, because I want to do these cool things. I want to make little Pinewood Derby cars and race them with the scouts. I mean, you see my back up here behind me. I wanted to do all that kind of stuff and share in those experiences, because I remember having so much fun as a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout myself, and I wanted to share those experiences with my son. So,
well, and there were many years that we had to sit there right with him and do things hand over hand, in terms of if there was a fine motor activity and he needed support. I remember one year doing ornaments with the floor polish and the glitter inside, and having to either hold the ornament, help him pour the glue. These were the things that were done. But what was your experience with scouting? So your dad is saying one of his best ways that he feels like he was able to connect with you was through scouting. Would you concur with that?
I would agree. I mean, Scouts has been a big part of my life for what, over 15, how many
Since
years?
you were a kindergartner. So
Yeah, for a long time. I've been in Scouts, all the way from Tiger all the way up to Eagle. So
well, and Eagle plus, now you're an adult leader.
Yeah.
So now you get to give back to these younger scouts, including your sister, who's also an Eagle Scout. But, think about all the cool things. I remember the first year you went away to camp, which
Oh my
was
gosh,
with your
yeah.
dad, and you were so little. And I remember you being so nervous before you were going off to camp. And I remember thinking, I'm going to get a call like on Monday and they're going to say, can you come and pick him up? He's just overwhelmed. And what ended up happening?
I had a lot of fun. It was definitely was a game changer for me.
yeah, and we had challenges, especially on that first summer camp. There were challenges, of course, but we persevered, we pushed through them, and ended up having a great time.
And I think you came home taller, probably hungrier, and definitely a lot dirtier.
Yeah.
But you think about how many skills you've gained, and even, pursuits that you now enjoy, like kayaking, that you learned or really got to experience much more so through scouting. Because honestly, if it hadn't been for scouting, we probably, wouldn't have gone kayaking or canoeing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, that's not just, camping, certainly we, do that. But I think it exposed you to so many new pursuits and new activities. And of course, earning all the merit badges, you were able to just get a taste of things that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Right.
I think it made you a very well-rounded person as a result.
I agree.
Okay, so Matthew, do you have another question for your dad?
Yes. I have to ask, what do you have to say to the other autism dads out there?
I was hoping that question would come up because I think for autism dads, the number one thing an autism dad can do, I mean, obviously they're going to love their son or daughter, but probably the number one thing, because Terry, you touched on it earlier, it's typically the moms that are doing 99% of the work. I mean, if it's more than 2% dads, I'd be surprised. But probably the number one thing that any dad, autism or special needs dad could do is to support the wife, because she's the one that's up doing her homework, reading articles or books, or preparing the special meals. But I mean, I have to hand it to you, Terry. You did 98% of it. And I mean, I would go to work and come home, and even with all the things that were going on, dinner was usually ready that night, or at least there was a plan, and I'd help out with dinner. But I mean, you did the vast majority of all of the work. And I think the dad's job in a special needs dad is to support the wife and just be there and recognize when, okay, mom's getting a little stressed out, she needs a break, take the baby or toddler or child, whatever. Mom, you go do something else. I got this. And just be able to be able and willing to jump in and help out wherever needed.
Well, and we're going to talk a lot about, some of like what you mentioned, even you mentioned special diets and cooking, different meals and things like that. We're going to talk to the leading expert in nutrition for autism, which is Julie Matthews, who happens to be a very, very dear friend of our family because of this journey. It's funny how that has worked out for us. But we're going to get into that later. But, once you learn these things, right? You learn about the opioid connection with gluten and dairy. You understand how gut issues can cause addictive or picky eating in children with autism. You start to understand, why does my child only want to eat cookies and crackers and chips and carbs and milk? You wanted to just drink milk. You would have rather just drank a sippy cup of milk than eat anything. And there were legitimate, biochemical reasons for that. And we had to learn that one. Then we had to understand what we wanted to do moving forward. And then we had to implement the plan. And, it wasn't always easy, and everything wasn't a home run. But we would see improvements, and that would keep us going. All right. Okay. So, we took this food out and you started eating more varieties of foods, or we added this food in and we noticed better eye contact, or, we did this nutritional intervention and we got better sleep. It all was like layering upon each other. And that was what gave us the fortitude to keep going. If it didn't work, we certainly would have said, okay, we need to pivot and not keep going down the road that's not working for us. And we had to do that a few times. But it was very important for me, that's a lot of pressure, right? Like doing all the research, figuring out all this stuff, having the consults with the specialists, and then implementing a plan. It meant a lot for you to have that faith in me and be able to say, yeah, all right, let's do it. Like, I know this seems crazy, but we're going to just try it and we're going to see what happens. And then we saw what would happen, and it would usually be positive. And then we'd go, oh my gosh, okay. So there's something to this whole, biomed thing. But, it was really important to me because I understand not every family has that, and so to dads out there, you play a pivotal role. You play a pivotal role in your family. And even if you're not the one taking the lead, although I do know dads who've taken the lead on the biomed side and have really spearheaded treatment protocols and all of these same things. But it really does take a team effort. And even though I know it's really challenging. We had our times of increased stress. I mean, when your child doesn't sleep, I can speak for myself. When my child didn't sleep, I didn't sleep. And, you can only go so long before, any little thing is, going to set you off, and you have very little patience, and it just adds an additional layer of stress on everything. So, moms need support, dads need to know that they're needed. I know that's probably been something I could have done better over the years. Is I am a very, I just kind of go charging into a situation, and maybe don't act like, I'm nervous about it or uncertain, but to be able to have that support was very, very meaningful. And, to all the dads out there, you do play a really important role in the life of your child with autism. And as a partner, if you are going to be embarking on an autism treatment, journey, to be most successful, I mean, at the end of the day, you were the most important thing. And, working as a team is going to get you farther. I mean, I've seen families where one parent wants to do diet and the other parent doesn't want to do diet, and the child is the one who loses out in that, right? So even if you are not with your partner or your spouse anymore, looking at these issues, because I know that, what the issues can be, especially if there's a marriage that is dissolved. There can be those power plays, but I would encourage you, if you can have a neutral zone, have it be your autism recovery journey, be the neutral zone. So that is what I will leave it with at that. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to say that, I mean, when we got married 20 years ago now, 20 plus years ago now, we like to say that your stuff is my stuff and my stuff is your stuff. And it's true. I mean, whatever you're taking on ends up being my stuff eventually. So you have to be, as a dad, you have to be supportive. I like to say that parenting and even co-parenting for special needs, it's a team sport. It does take more than one player to do it. I mean, I've heard of so many families where maybe mom and dad aren't together anymore, and mom is doing all the special diet and taking all the things that need to be done to help heal their child, and then it goes over to dad, or even vice versa, and then they go out to McDonald's for dinner or whatever, or fast food, or just something completely not to the child's benefit. Yeah, it might be easier to go to McDonald's or wherever, but is that for the child's best interest? And that's what you have to keep in mind, is everything is for that child. I mean, that's, I think our relationship became stronger because of all of the, I don't want to say trials and tribulations, but of all of the stuff that we went through together. I just think that made us just that much stronger as a couple and inseparable. And I mean, because we're all in it for that dude sitting to your right.
Well, and with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us for this episode. I hope that you've gotten, a nice perspective of a father's view of our journey together with an autism diagnosis and then losing that diagnosis. Matthew, do you have any final words to say before we sign off?
I think that's about it.
Yeah.
I think mom covered it.
Well, great. Well, thank you. I hope that all the dads out there listening, are inspired by you and our journey. But also, I feel like that is a little bit of a gap in our community, is support for dads. And, dads, you play an incredibly important and pivotal role in your family dynamic and in the life of your child with autism or not. And I would love to see more support geared towards dads, because I think that is definitely a missing piece. So I appreciate you being here with us. So again, Eric Hirning, thank you very much for joining us. And that will conclude another episode of our I'm Possible Journey podcast. I'm Terri Hirning signing off.
And I'm Matthew Hirning.
Thank you.